Namaste, everybody. Good morning. Today is Mother's Day 2023 here in the States, and I wanted to take some time out and encourage those of you who grew up feeling disconnected from mom, feeling unloved from mom, those of us who grew up with moms perhaps who had alcoholism, those of us who grew up with moms who were highly narcissistic, passive aggressive, possibly even codependent, those of us who grew up feeling invisible to mom, those of us who did not have the healthiest of childhoods, and as a result, we now suffer with our own mother wounds. Mother's Day can be a very challenging time because we tend to think that the world outside of us is celebrating their mother, and everybody in the world today is having a wonderful time with their family, reminiscing about wonderful childhood experiences. And that is a faulty premise. It's a cognitive distortion, but it's the way the inner child in us views the world. And it's not our fault because childhood experiences, they actually taint the lens by which we perceive the world. And the way the world works is that the experiences that shaped our perceptions of the world become this inner movie that we play over and over and over. And the filter by which we view the world is cracked, it's skewed, and it's not our fault. Our brain is designed to pay attention to those things that we think caused us pain. And so it filters out things in our experience that actually might bring us joy and bring us happiness. So when we are struggling with things like Mother's Day and our brain by default does this thing that compares us to other people, and it reminds us that we can't celebrate our moms. It is a painful day. I struggled throughout most of my life going to a card store trying to pick out a mother's card for my mom. None of them fit. And I remember standing there and aching, the hole in my heart was aching because I so wished that I could pick out a card and give it to my mom, a card that was full of beautiful, warm sentiments, a card that represented this beautiful divine connection that I had between me and my mom. But the authentic truth was that that connection didn't exist. There was an abandonment trauma there. I did have an insecure attachment style. It did manifest as codependency. It did mask pain. It did manifest as people-pleasing and self-sacrifice and avoidance of conflicts, a lack of boundaries, an inability to speak my truth, a terrible sense of unworthiness. And it did skew the way I showed up in the world. And it has taken a few decades for me to gain some control over the past, to gain some control over the way that I view the world, to gain control over how I see myself, to gain some mental clarity around how I want to view the world. And I'm at a point in my life, thank goodness, although it has taken me a while to get here because I had to go through various stages of consciousness. Level 1 consciousness is you're in the matrix. You're running out your childhood patterns and programs, but you don't know it. Level 2 consciousness is when you know that you are in a program. It's sort of like level 1, you're in a corn maze, but you don't know it. You just keep bumping into the corn and try to do what you can inside the corn. The second level of consciousness is when you realize, uh-oh, I'm in a pattern. I'm in the corn maze, and I can recognize that what I'm doing doesn't work. The third level of consciousness is when you are actively setting out to correct those patterns and correct those programs. And that's the challenging time. That's when we need to rely on resources and tools. I call it the mental Olympic stage, where you are policing your own thoughts, you are managing your emotions, you're saying to your inner self, shutty, shutty. You're not going to react to your emotions without thinking. You're going to have some accountability about how you show up in the world. And more importantly, you're learning to change the filter by which you see reality. There is a surrender to letting go of needing to react to everything. And that is huge, and that will put you on the path to level 4 consciousness, where in this stage you're experiencing serendipity. But at this stage, you've decided that you're going to let go. So there's no more complaining, there's no more arguing, there's no more looking for things to suggest that someone has done you wrong. There's between level 3 and level 4, There's complete and absolute surrender. And that's scary for those of us who have lived in defense all the time, and those of us who have felt wounded by the mothers that were created and destined to take care of us. We can live in a hyper state of awareness. We can live in hypervigilance and not even know it. When we feel under attack, we can attack back, or we can recoil, or we can fawn and people please and find ways to get people to love us and to like us, which is all a trauma response. Or we can dissociate, we can check out, we can drink, we can shop, we can find people to have sex with, we can involve ourselves in other people's lives and create chaos in our life. And the chaos in our life is just causing us to run from the pain that is in our life. I'm a firm believer in stopping, in just stopping, in shutty of the mind, shutty of people, just going into the stillness and embracing what is. But to do that, you need tools, because once you stop and you look within and you start dealing with the wounds of the past, all the shame comes to the surface. It is like bats out of hell. All of the negative programming, all of the harsh inner self-talk. And it is an absolute struggle, and it is mental Olympics to regain some semblance of mind. And that's why meditation is so powerful and so important. Because through meditation, you're able to develop the space and the self-awareness to manage these emotions and to manage the inner narrative until you're able to cultivate self-compassion and mindfulness. And you understand the path to healing is through consciousness. You can do this. For those of us who are struggling today, I just wanted you to know that you're not alone and that it's okay to feel whatever you feel. The first part of recovery is accepting your inner reality. What we do most of the time is we battle our inner reality. We say, I shouldn't feel this about my mom, or I should have felt this about my mom. And you're stuck. You're in a state of resistance. You're not in a state of expansion, which is abundance. You're not in a state of love. You can't see the love that is all around you. You can't connect to the love that is inside of you when you're in resistance to what is. So the first step today, if you are struggling on Mother's Day, is to accept how you feel, embrace it, move into it, expand so that you can process these emotions. Don't run from them. If you feel like crying, cry. If you feel like being angry, be angry, but don't react to it, right? You don't want to hold on to it. Don't let the sun set with anger in your heart. Give your anger some space. Reach out to a trusted friend. Talk about it, vent about it, but know that the way out and the way through it is to resolve it and to let it go. What does letting go mean? Letting go means I accept what I cannot change. It means I accept the suffering. It means that I accept the pain of it. It means that I don't expect other people to change. It means I don't have to change the way I feel right now. I just have to accept it. The miracle of accepting where you are right now is the transformation. When you stop resisting what is, when you say to yourself, of course I feel this way, when you validate how you feel, when you stop judging your inner child, when you start overriding the harsh inner critic with a more compassionate voice, that is when you experience a transformation. Ultimately, it's my hope that those of you who are struggling today, that you get to a point where you can let go, where you have such a high state of consciousness, you are so highly evolved emotionally, that you recognize that your mother was wounded, that your mother was living below the veil of consciousness, that your mother had issues, and that she was the mother she was based on who mothered her, who fathered her. She was who she was based on what happened to her. And that while part of our recovery process is taking an objective inventory over and about how we were mothered, it's very important that we keep this idea that letting go and compassion is part of the process. It doesn't mean that we forgive. It doesn't mean, and when I say forgive, I mean it doesn't mean that we hold on to these hot rocks. It doesn't mean that we forget what happened. It doesn't mean that we have to allow people in our lives. We can hold people separate. We can hold a space for other people. We can hold the space of understanding. We can hold the space of compassion and not allow that person in our lives ever again. We can hold the grief that we experience when we need to hold someone separate from ourselves. We can hold the loss. We can hold the disappointment. We could hold the wishes that we hoped would be resolved on our journey with our mothers. We can hold all of it. And we can also hold compassion for the self and compassion for the mom who may be so stuck in her own drama that she doesn't realize how her drama affected us in our childhood, who may still be protesting, who may be still begging you to understand where they're coming from. A mom who hasn't yet fully understand on a humble level that even though she was wounded, it doesn't mean that there weren't consequences. What a lot of moms who are below the veil and who are wounded and who are stuck don't realize as their children age and they become of their own individuation. Those of us who are coming into self-awareness and taking the objective inventory and who are trying to evolve past the past, we want to get unstuck. And one of the things that mothers who are stuck don't really realize oftentimes is that what the adult child is looking for is just some sense that you can see me, that you can acknowledge that in your unawareness there were wounds that happened to me. Before you go and you explain, speaking on behalf of the mom, before the mom goes and explains, well, this is why I didn't leave your father, and this is why I didn't step in, and this is why I hurt you, and this is why I was an alcoholic, or this is why I was passive aggressive, or this is why I was curt with you, and this is why I couldn't show up for you, which is really justifying the wounds that took place. And to really heal the relationship between a mother who has done things that have wounded her child, it's important for the mom on the path to recognize that in her unawareness, in her acting out her own karma or her own healed parts of herself, there were consequences. And there needs to be this divine space of acknowledgement from a mom and her child for the birthing of this child's experience. Because what hurts us is the inability to experience the unexperienced emotions. Gabor Mate calls them the unexplored emotions, the unexplored terrain. When a mom says, I'm going to hold a space for you, and in this space, I'm going to give you myself, my all, and I'm going to be there for you, and I'm going to hear you, and I'm going to acknowledge how my alcoholism or my narcissism or my unawareness or how my rigidity, my stuckness was unable to recognize how I was wounding you in the moment, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that I hurt you, and I will do anything and everything to gain back your trust. And I want to hear all of it. I want to know how my unawareness wounded you. And if a mom can delay her justification, her rationalization, her wanting to hear me, mom, take from her child some sense of forgiveness. When a mom gets to a point where she's able to just shine the understanding and the empathy towards her child, that gives the child the right to become an individual person separate from mom with their own experience of mom, which is so healing, and it elevates the mother-child relationship to an entirely different level. And you need to be a conscious and awakened mother to be able to hold that space for your child, but I can guarantee you it is transformative. And that is why I love working with people who are willing to take that conscious journey and they're willing to acknowledge in themselves their own wounds. And from that space, they're able to understand the benefit of holding space for someone else that's minus them, that is purely about the other person. And if that can happen inside healing relationships where one conscious person decides to say what needs to get said for the benefit of the other person, now we're getting somewhere. It doesn't mean that you don't exist. It means that in your awakening of self, in your awakening of your own wounds, you're able to understand what this other person that you're communing with needs. and you're willing to offer it without taking anything back. It's pure giving. And what happens on an energetic level is that you open yourself up to receiving, right? That's the way it works. So as your soul expands beyond this past trauma, beyond the karma, beyond the defensiveness, as justification and rationalizations, as your soul expands and your mind expands, because as your soul expands, so does your mind, or actually as your mind expands, so does your soul. They work in tandem. And your body is relieved of all of these emotional blocks, then you create a pathway and a roadway to commune with this other person. And miracles happen in that space. And you also teach the other person that they have a right to think separate from you. You give someone permission to be their own individual self, which is such a gift, because most people in their unawareness love with conditions. I'm going to love you as long as you act properly. I'm going to love you as long as you don't step out of the line of who I think you should be. I'm going to love you until. I'm going to love you until. And that's conditional love. And so as we teach ourselves to love ourselves unconditionally, and that is the path for the adult child that's been wounded by an unconscious mom, an unawakened mom, we have to return to the self. We have to learn to love the self unconditionally, including that harsh inner critic, including this wounded ego that wants to fight and is looking for someone on the outside to either please us or is hypervigilant, aware of the person who might leave us. So we have to learn to love ourselves at that level of unconditional love. And when we're able to do that, we're able to hold a space for others, and it's absolutely beautiful. And so if you're struggling today, I get it. Accept how you feel, but also know that there is a great power within you that will allow you to heal the hole in your heart. And that begins with surrendering to what is and surrendering to what has been. On the path, as you grow, as you ascend, and as you transform various levels of consciousness, you're going to get to a point eventually where you want to let it go. And that's when you will be emotionally free. So I hope this short session has helped you. I hope that it has inspired you today to believe in yourself and to believe in the love that you are. Dear one, just because you may have had a mom who never made you feel like you were good enough doesn't mean that you're not enough, right? It's a lie. You are enough. This idea that you're separate from mom and therefore separate from self and therefore separate from me or separate from the universe, even that's a lie. You are one with everything, and everything is you. What we have to do is transform your consciousness. You have to go from level 1 consciousness to level 2, level 3, level 4. You have to continue to transform your levels of consciousness. And it is a process of transforming your perception. It is also a process of surrendering to your emotions. It is a process of looking within. It is a process of setting a goal that allows you to know that at one point in time, you want to be emotionally clear. You want to be emotionally free. You don't want to hold on to the past. You want to be unstuck. You want to live in the field of potential where everything and anything is possible for you, where despite having an unhealthy relationship with your mother, you're still able to love yourself and to love others. So I hope this has been helpful. Namaste, everybody. Until next time. Bye for now.